Hi, welcome to another my tutorial. Today's tutorial is trying to figure out how to set up a scene by a riverbank, and this is an asset that I have acquired and which will be provided as part of a tutorial. In fact, you will find my tutorial file that I provide will have more assets. But anyway, just to show how it got started, um, let's just quickly have an idea what I'm trying to achieve in this tutorial. This is already set up, and basically, assuming I have only the raw material that I receive in the first place, I will do an animation basically on this boat moving along the riverbank, all right, as required for my music video. And the end result is basically uh, what you can see on the screen now. In a night scene, having the riverbank enhanced with lights. So that's what we will try to do in this tutorial. So how do we do it? So let's start from beginning. Assuming normally when you have an asset, for example, this is a free asset that I got from the internet. It's usually come in one big object mesh. So so if you want to build on this asset, you will probably need to do a little bit of build up using this existing asset. To do that, you will need to select components of this asset to build, right? For example, the embankment. To build embankment along this place, you will probably need a straight bank line and vertical and horizontal as a minimum. Now, this asset does comes with embankment here that is already with a corner. So I will just use that with these two pieces. I can construct new structure, which I will show you in a moment. Uh, why it is good to have embankment with corners of this kind is that you can easily extend and shorten the length of the embankment. For example, if I want to make this embankment longer, I just have to do tab, select the edges of that embankment, and then press a G, Y to extend it or shorten it. You can see. So that's one thing I can do. Obviously, in this example, uh, building the embankment doesn't give you the entire pathway, so you will have to look at the asset. Just a quick look of the asset. I mean, you can see that this asset has pavement with side curbs with leaf. It also has some willow trees. It has some houses. I think there are about three or four type of houses provided in this free assets. It also have a water wheel. All right. Obviously, the as I say, when you get free assets, they come as one big mesh. So you have to break them out in order to start constructing your own little scene, right? Um, so just to explain what that means is that, for example, if I have a look at a house, I do a tab and I press the A to select all the vertices of the tab. If I want to break up the house into separate components, the typical option I use is mesh separate by material to see if I can have different component. But in this example, this entire house is using a UV map and it's only one material it uses. You can see that by looking at the object. So this is currently the object and it has an image here set up, and you have a text bump here set up as well. So this is the original setup, so I'm not going to change it. So going back to what I'm trying to explain is that you can then try to see if you can break the house up into smaller components. You can do the tab again, mesh, separate by loose part. This time you notice that it does have many components to build this house, and you can use it to reconstruct another house using all this material, or rather, sorry, all this component. So this is just to illustrate to you one way in which you get an asset using the separate function to break up into components and then construct. Now I'm going to do undo because I don't want to break up this house into small parts. So I just go back to where I was. All right. So this is where I was. So when I break up this mesh scene, and I found that it has quite a few components. So those are nice components that I can use to construct. So as I said, to construct is not part of this tutorial really. I just want to show you how I set it up, a scene that can achieve what I want to achieve quickly. So this is what I had from a starting point, all right? So to demonstrate to you, obviously the other thing that is always try to organize all your components into a set of collections that is easier to manage. And if you look at my outline, I call this a Chinese city, and below, I have different things I would like to group them into. I have the buildings part separated. I have the light setting and the miscellaneous. If I selected the curve and going back to the outline and pressing a period on the numpad, it will zoom into that particular object, which is the pathway here. You can see I already put it into the path areas. Um, and I also have other part of the houses, which I think I put it into the house collections and so on. So as you expand on a scene and having all these components already created through this separate mesh option, it's also good to at the same time organize your outline with logical set of collection. Just a reminder, you just have to click this little button and you will create one collection for you. All right. So if I am under the building, I click, it will create a new collection called buildings. But of course, it will have a number here to show that there are 6 collection under buildings. So that's not something I want now, but I just say that this is how you can build collections and then putting objects into right collection so that it is much more organized and easier for you to remember where are all these components. Remember, this scene as you build will get more and more complex, and it's really important to have it all set up in a way that is easy to remember where they are. So on my file, I have a note called tutorial that will comes with this tutorial file. You notice that I already listed out the step that I want to use for this tutorial. So I have just gone through step 1 to basically explain that when you receive an asset, you have to separate it into material and then by loose parts so that you get all these little components and then organize them into all the collection that I just explained on the outline to start with before you get to increase more and more assets into your scene. All right. The other thing I want to explain is sometimes when you look at an asset, you may find something that might be interesting to animate. For example, in this scene, there is a water wheel. Yeah, in this case, the water wheel actually comes as one object. You have to separate out into, I mean, from a logical standpoint, the wheel, if you want to animate it to turn, only that part on the center should turn, right? The one supporting it should not turn, which I separate out as a separate component because that part I do not want to animate. I just want it to stay stationary, but I only want to animate the wheel. So going back to my outline and I press period. So I have this thing called the water wheel mesh, right? How I animate it, I basically just select the water wheel and then do a shift S and move the cursor to the selected point. Uh, Now in this example, this origin of this wheel is right somewhere else. I have to move it to the center, so I just had to do object, set origin to geometry. So that I have the origin at the center of the wheel. So the next thing is that normally is when we animate a mesh, it's better to animate it through an empty. So to do that, I parent this mesh into an empty, but to add the empty to the center of this mesh, you have to do now just add empty plain dash. So now I have an empty just created, and I can position this empty into this object. All right. So first I had positioned my cursor to the center of the view. You can see this little red and white circle. So just to show that I have the cursor at the center of the view. And I want to position the new empty to that position. So I can put slash S selection to cursor. So now you can see I have an empty that I have just created, which is at the center of the view. And normally what you do is that you will parent this object to the empty and control P. And then object keep transform. The reason why you use keep transform is that sometimes you have done some scaling of the object and you can apply the transformation first, which is using control A, but normally what I do, I just do parent and keep transform ready. Now I'm not going to do it only because I have already created the scene. So I just want to, I already have a empty called empty view here, and I will get rid of this empty that I just created for this demo. But so in reality, that's how I put the empty at the center of this mesh, and then having the view parented to it as shown in this diagram on the outline. You can see this is the mesh. Sorry, this is a mesh, the water view mesh, and this is empty. The sidebar here, you can see that it's not parented to the empty because I doesn't want it to be animated or turn in this case. So how do I make the wheel turn? It's very simple. Now that I have the empty as a parent of the wheel, uh, I, in fact, I have already done it. I just going to walk you through that. Basically, when we do, you set it at the 0 point to do the keyframing. Uh, at this moment, I will press N and go to Item to see that I have the keyframe done. So at this moment, I have done a keyframe at this position. All right. So to make it turn, normally what you do is that you would do a shift right arrow to go to the end of your frame of the timeline that you want to create. Do another right arrow. Normally you do one frame after the last frame of your scene, which is 1218, one frame more than 1217. And here I change the turning Y, which happened to be the one that control the wheel. So this is the one that I set to a different number to make it turn. All right. Uh, Uh, so the number at the moment I'm using is let me go back there again. Is 1081. Um, so if I run this from the original value to minus 1081, it will done. Okay, so this is a very simple animation of turning the wheel. All right, so that's the first part of the demonstration of setting up a water view animation. Next will be adding the bridges. Notice that in this diagram, they have a bridge already provided. So, instead of creating new bridges, I can use this bridge in my new structure as well. So now just going to show you that I have already added a number of bridges extension. So I will just show you firstly what I have done in terms of extending this walkway and pavement. I click extension. You can see that I have actually built all this additional walkway using the original components. All right. So these are basically constructed using all this original asset and make a new set of structure that I required for my scene. And as I explained earlier on, to add bridges, for this demo I put it into a separate collection. And if I click onto it, I just want to show you where I added edge. So you can see that I have a number of bridges added into the scene. All right. So these bridges are basically coming from this same bridge, and I just scale it up or down, by pressing S, uh, X, or Y, depending how you want to do it. S, if X because I want it to be expanding in this direction, right? Uh, Y, in this case, this bridge was rotated 90 degrees, and then you can again scale S, Y to extend it long, longer or shorter, depending on the width of the river that you want. So that's adding embankment extension and then adding bridges as the next step that I showed in step 3 of this tutorial. So next I want to do is add a river fence. So to make it nicer, I thought it would be good to have some fences built around it. Uh, the fences are I set up in a collection called River Fence Lantern. So let me start again. I go back to the outline, press minus to go back to the beginning of my outline. Chinese city open up. I believe it's under miscellaneous. Yes, River Fence Lantern. River Fence Lantern. Um, I will demonstrate to you how I add fences along the embankment. I have two type of fences that is also given as part of this tutorial that I thought might be interested. So let's start with the first fence type. I will now enable it. Okay, first I just want to explain the basic part of the fence. This is again one of the assets I received that comes as one big fence. So in order for me to construct fence on all the embankment, uh, typically you should have three component. One on the right hand side of the fence edges, one on the left hand side of the fence edges, and another one is the body, right? But this fence has another part that I thought it would be easier if you separate out, which is the top part. The top part is simply a horizontal rod because this is the way the design works. So I think it would be good to have this as a separate component so that you can, extend it as you need to What I mean is that if I go into tab mode, you can see that if I select one edge, G, Y, I can make the top part left and right and so on, uh, in terms of short or longer. So that's why in this fence, besides the right, left, and the center body, I also have the top part in view of the way the design works. Uh, I thought that would be the easiest way for me to use as my basic component to start constructing. So if I open up my basic component for the fence for this type one, so you can have a fence left, fence right, fence body, because you can extend left and right. Uh, Typically, in most, you know, people will use what they call an array. All right. Uh, what I mean by array is that the body, if you can see, I have a modifier called array. Currently set at 5 because that's the length of this pavement that I can fulfill. So I can do like, shorter or longer. But with a bit of try and error, I thought 5 works for this particular part of the pavement. So that's the body. And the top part is just a simple long rod, as you may call it. Now, when we do array, obviously, it's easy if you do it along x and y axis without too much of rotation, move, adjustment, and all that. So just so that I want to repeat things that I should have explained earlier on. That when you do modeling, it is good, especially in this simple structure. It is really straight, a lot of straight river line. It's good to set up your model and position them into x and y axis. In this case, you can see that this straight line is actually along the y-axis. So the intent of making it in terms of straight lines is easier for you to construct uh, without having to do rotation and all that kind of adjustment. So it speed up the whole thing. So that's a fence, all right. So what I do is that if I'm not going to waste your time. So I just want to show you that I already constructed using the component that I just explained into the riverbank. So these are all the fences. If I press period to zoom in, so you can see I have constructed fences along most part of the embankment. I only construct on those part where I would be using it as part of my scene, animation scene, to give that visual effect. So it doesn't have to be everywhere. All right. Now, some of you may like another type of fence, which is a typical Chinese old fence. So I'm going to go into the second one. On the outline, you can see I'm going to turn on the second type of fence. You may not be able to see it quite far. Let me zoom in. All right. This is a pretty nice marble fence. All right. Again, in most of the time when you build fences, you need left and right and the body, right? So in this example, it just happened that left and right is required over here, and now the rest of the fences can just be the body part. The body part again is an array. If I would just put it to one, you know, that's the body. All right, that's the body. So if I control Z, yes, 24, yeah. 24 just was sufficiently able to reach up to almost to the end of this embankment which I wanted. I could have just add another one, but I think if I do 25, it doesn't look so nice. Oh, okay, 25 is even better. It just go nicely into the edge of the bridge. All right. So that explain how I set up the fences along the river embankment to enhance this scene. Um, to further make it nicer, Because in traditional China, I saw some pictures that they normally also have lanterns along the river bank or canal, in this case, or canal banks. So I'm going to show you the river lantern, which I already set up in this example. I just switch it on. Uh, oops. Okay. This is a set, but in this example, it is a very simple, we call it, uh, lantern. It's just basically a rod, and then you have three connected lantern attached to it. All right. It is an array. If I were to change this to array on the modifier to 1, and then press period on the 3D view. All right, this is the single lantern post. So, you can increase it to as many as you like along the river bank. Because everything is organized nicely into the X direction. So I just have to type that as X. I think the original number was, can't remember how many. Oh yeah, it was 9. Okay. So that was how I set up 9 over this side and some over this side. Um, Now, how is it that I have all this empty gap was because when I was designing this river scene, I also decided that there should be some part of the embankment where you have a little staircase like this. All right, there are two types given in this model, so that uh, I put it as the entrance to the embankment. All right, so you can have fence here. So so I will sh now walk you through the stair entrance. So let me go into the stair entrance. Where is that? The stair entrance. Let me just select this one and then press a dot. Yeah, it's over here under stair entrance. All right, so this collection stair entrance. So, well, what I do is that I added at some of the points where you have this entrance set up. So normally when you set scene, you should put the stair first, right, before you build the fences, so that you know where you should start the fence and end the fence, all right? So this is why the fence I built stop here or start from here, and having the stairs set there, so you can walk up from the river to the embankment. All right, so that is how the stair was set up. So to make it even more interesting, I noticed some of the old Chinese environment, they have what they call pillars around this kind of entrance. So what I do is I added in these so-called pillars. All right, there are two parts in these components. So the other thing I also wanted to show you is that, I mean, you have the pillars standing vertical, and then you have your horizontal support beam. All right. So that is on the outline, you can see. So these are the basic components. So with all those entrances, if I click onto the others, you can start seeing that I have others, uh, you know, pillars also built around all those part where you have stairs going up the embankment. All right. The next thing was that you know I thought I will provide what I call some beautiful lanterns hanging around the pillars. Again, for this demonstration, I'm providing a free lantern. This is a lantern, you can see. It is a pretty nice lantern with all the old Chinese pictures. On closer look, you can see them, but from far, it doesn't see much of it. Maybe let me try to explain a little bit about the lantern shading. Uh, the lantern shading, I'm going to shading mode now, and if I go into the lantern and look at the material, this lantern actually originally come with different pictures, but I thought I'd make it a little bit nicer, add in a couple of my own pictures to make it more beautiful. I added color to the ribbon, which is a red ribbon here. The setting is very simple, just red color. TV, according to TV screen, if you have gone through my previous tutorial on how I set up the bar counter, I use same material to brighten up the side of the lantern with a TV screen setup. This is how I set up that. All I do is that I just add in a picture that traditionally used for old lantern in China. So that is how I set up a TV main screen. There are two parts. There's a part for the smaller uh, lantern and a big lantern in the center. So you find that I have two material, one for small for the pictures on this side, and then the big TV screen on the center. You have these yellow beads, traditional Chinese beads that I use for lantern. The wood, I use bubbling material that I got free from another site. So I thought it looks pretty nice on this lantern. I got this lantern with nothing, all right, no material. So all this material was added in by me to make it look nicer. Otherwise, it's a very boring, uh, just plain lantern with no material. Uh, there was a default material that is white actually. It's still here. I don't need it. So I guess I can remove it if you want or leave it there. I don't really care. So these are the basic material. There's also a little very nice little embroidery here, which I put in red color. And there's a chain here. The chain I just simply put black color, right? It is the chain wire. Notice that all those material that I have and use, I give it a proper label. Where I'm not using, I will leave it as it is, or you can remove it if you don't want it, take it out. Because those are the default material. The default material in this case was either black or white. That's it. So I thought I'd make it nicer by adding in my own as part of this scene setup. So the lantern. So if I go back to outline, I selected the lantern, right? And then put it outline, I press period again. It shows that it's all under a collection called Lantern Entrance. I have a light setup for this particular lantern. I only have three lanterns in this scene, all right? I mean, you could do more if you want, just copy and duplicate it. This was set up for a pavilion, which I will explain in a moment. Why I have this light. Because of the scene setting, I thought it's good to have a light here to brighten up the pavilion a bit more. Uh, but I will go into that in a moment. All right. So now I have gone to step 5 with the pillar and the lantern done. All right. So let's now look at trees. Trees. The original trees come with only willow trees. If I go back into outline, press period, I put all the tree into a collection called Origin under Willow Tree. Um, so And to enhance this embankment, I duplicate this tree into more places. If I go into my extension collection, you can see I have added in just a few more willow trees in different locations. All right, these are just places that make it looks nicer. So that's willow tree. I added in another tree that I got from another source called the sakura white tree. These are sakura trees. By the way, what I'm providing is a low poly sakura tree, all right? So that to avoid making the scene too heavy, I use low poly sakura tree. So again, with willow tree and sakura tree, I think it reflects more closer to a Chinese environment that I'm trying to build. So that's number 6 on tree setup along the river. It does looks nicer now, right? With fences, lanterns, and some trees. Next, I have to add houses around this pavement to make it more, lively and realistic. The houses, let me click the one, go into the outline, press. So essentially, the houses, the one that come with the scene is there are 4 type of houses. So you notice that I will now open up all these other houses where I hide because it was built already by me. So instead of wasting time trying to show you where and how I put each of the houses, you know, I just want to show you this is where it has. Another thing is houses is a little bit boring, so I thought I would provide something much more interesting in the traditional Chinese environment. Notice in this particular extended structure of pavement, I have a empty center. That's because I already decided to have a courtyard added in that particular position. So if I go to outline and switch on the, the courtyard, there's one more here. I think there's one more here, one more here, one more here. Shops. Um, oops, might have deleted it accidentally. So what I wanted to say is that I do a Shift D G X. Oops. Yeah, I might have accidentally deleted it, but yeah, my intent was to put a courtyard here. So this is a small courtyard in a traditional Chinese environment. All right. The rest of them, I just want to repeat what I just added in. I added in. Let me take it out again. I added in a residence. This is a typical residence, which is right here. This is a pretty nice old Chinese traditional residence. I added in a pavilion. This is a pavilion. And remember earlier on I mentioned that I have a lantern added here actually with with a light. Uh, I think it's easier if I turn it to a night sky and I switch on to my night world. Yeah, so you can see why I put the light there. All right, so this pavilion is one of the important part of my scene. So that corner is important for me to light it up a little bit brighter. All right, that's the reason why I have this special light for this lantern to brighten up the area. But back to the pavilion, if I select pavilion period, yeah, um, I added this pavilion. Let's go back the, to the normal material mode. So that's one pavilion I added in. There's another pavilion here. Yeah, there's another old Chinese pavilion that I added on this corner. Slightly different from the other pavilion. And I added in a important traditional pagodas a little bit at the back end. It's part of the background scene that I would be using. So these are the three pavilion and a pagoda that I added in. So there are things I added in that, but will not be included in this tutorial file because it's not created by me, but I just put it in here for demonstration. You can see that I have quite a few type of shops. I have a courthouse, this one here. Um, I have this medical shop or traditional medical shop. Uh, there's another one here that's slightly different. Another medical shop. This is not it's a small one. And I have also a pottery shop. And another one of those. Well, it's not really Chinese. It's a kind of a Japanese, old Japanese building that I got from another source. Yeah, there's another one here. Also Japanese type of, you do find Japanese buildings sometimes in China. So this is something that I thought to make it look nicer. So these are the shops, residence, pavilions, and courtyard that I added into the scene to make it a little bit more interesting. I want to repeat again, the shops will not be included as part of this tutorial. You can just use the houses and duplicate it along the river if you don't have it. All right, that covers step 7 of buildings that added into the scene. Next is the water. What I mean, the water that comes with this scene is a little bit, well, it's not as nice as the one that you can find in Blender. So let me go to the water scene. What I did is that I added in my own water. I will close the original ones and use my own water scene. This water scene, I use it in most of my simulation. To explain a little bit, if you look at the shading, it's not a very complicated shading. Uh, this water shader is actually animated. It actually move. You can see if I click on the play button, the water move a little bit. All right, so this is basically animate shader, uh, and the setup is pretty straightforward by just animating the rotation of the noise texture to give this effect. All the settings, I'm not part of the tutorial, but you can always play with all this number to have slightly different water effect. But the key ones that will animate the scene is basically found in this mapping file that changes the rotation of the texture. All right, so that I thought would give you a little bit of explanation. The other thing that about the water is, let me go there again, is that when you select the water, I have another thing called the reflection plane. The reflection plane is added in to basically allow, make it a little bit bigger. It should cover the part of the scene where I want the reflection to be more, I would say, nicer. It's needed in the case of EV environment. So let me go back into the day mode. I'm now in EV scene. with the little reflection plane added in, which is basically add light probe reflection plane. All right. Uh, it does provide a little bit more reflection from the surrounding. But for day scene, it's okay to use EV. But for night scene, EV doesn't look so good. Again, if I just switch to a night scene, you look at the water. Obviously, you need light. So maybe I'll talk about it in a moment when I set up the light. But for now, uh, I just want to explain that if you want really good night scene reflection from water, you should render on cycle, which I will, basically that was what I use. Um, I always avoid cycle because a cycle tend to be rendered quite slow, while EV I can do things a lot more faster for building any scene. Okay, let me pause here for a moment, just double check. So let me go back to the material shading and layout. So that kind of explain about the water shader with animation and adding a reflection layer for EV day scene. But for night scene, as I said, the recommendation is using Cycle Engine for rendering. I will show the night scene again a little bit more when I add in lights, all right? Uh, in terms of the music video, the request was to have animation on a little boat flowing along this river. That was how this whole scene was built for that purpose, all right? So let's look at the boat. Actually, in this example, they already have some boat provided. So instead of getting other boats, I just use the same boat and duplicate it. So the boat that I have animated, I call it boat animate. If I select that and then press a period on the 3D scene, okay, this is the boat. The animation is pretty straightforward. It's basically trying to make the boat move from one point to another point. So this is what I call motion tracking. I will now go into a different folder under motion. Maybe I should put the word motion here. So in this motion, I have an image plane of a lady sitting there. Basically, this is just a video with transparent background, uh, singing as she sit there. And to animate this is basically I have an empty. I want to repeat again. Typically in this kind of animation, most of the time we use a little empty, uh, which is put at the front of the scene. Let me see why I can see it. Okay, I need to enable the extras. All right, just go into this little tab, click extra, and you can see the empty more clearly. I must have switched it off for other reason. Just switch off all that. So this empty is a parent of the boat, so that when the empty move, the boat move. All right. Uh, Similarly, because I have all these other objects on the boat, I would also parent this plane to the empty, which is shown here. I call it empty canal boat ride. I have cameras set up that also move with the boat. In this example, yeah, this is the camera that I set up. Uh, this camera on the boat movement, if I just quickly explain how I animate the boat. As I explained, the empty was set up uh, at the beginning, and everything is parented to it. And all I have to do is to move along the river, so from one point to another point. So what I do is I select the empty and I keyframe it starting from I think somewhere here. You can do this little arrow and jump to that particular first keyframe, right? Uh, and I think it's in the X direction. Yeah. So the next keyframe is selected. It goes all the way here. Oh, where is that? Press a period. Okay, here it is. So so what I do is that I move the X 200 meters away from the original. So if I were to show you, can can you see the camera? The boat is moving, but at the same time, if I press zero, the camera also moves with the boat. So this is how it looks like. All right. I think we are on the day scene. Oh, sorry, night scene. So maybe go back to the world, change back to day scene. This is what it looks like. Okay, it runs again. We are now in EV mode, and this is the effect of the camera following the boat, looking with the background of the river. So that's animating the boat motion with the image plane of this lady singing. Uh, of course, normally when I do scene setting, I do not use image plane. I normally start with a 3D person model uh, to do all the setting before I use an image plane. Image plane is normally the last one that I would add because it has a different type of settings and lightings. I will explain again a little bit more on that, how I do the image plane in the night scene. So let's move on to the next part of it, the environment, which is usually in my case, for a day scene, let's go to the world. Day scene, okay, over here. I normally use HDRI file, which is essentially, you know, you can get it from HDRI Heaven site for free. I have a number of HDRI file. I have chosen this particular one because I wanted to see the cloud on the top. So that seems to suits me nicely for this video. So it's called sunrise. So if I select sunrise, which is already selected in this case, it will give me the scene that I wanted to have. A little bit subtle. I think you can see a bit of cloud here. All right. So that's kind of the background. If you want, you can go into shading and look at the world setup. Uh, One of the things I found out when you do scene setting up, uh, most of the time you need to move the scene a little bit up by zero point 0.1. It helps. The rotation is more or less, you know, let me go back to my camera and go into the render mode. You can see the background of the cloud moving. You just have to adjust to the point where you feel you like it. All right. This is not what I want to see the building, but I just want to see something subtle like a little bit of cloud at the background. I think this position looks pretty okay. Right, so that's how you rotate the HDRI, the position, the background scene that you want to see. And zero point 0.1 is something that I lift the scene up so that I see the cloud a little bit better and not the land because this scene has land and sky. So moving it up would only allow me to see the sky a little bit more. So that's kind of the cloud setting for background. Okay, let me go back to my shading mode and layout. So that covers step 10 of the HDRI setting. Oh, okay. I must confused. I skipped one step. I should be only talking about animating the boat, but I also covered step 11 early on about how to animate the boat. Right. Um, 'Cause anyway, that already explained that I have an empty. I make it as a parent. I have a camera settings, and that was what I just went through early on. Next step is simulate the run, which I already did. Basically, what it says, just click the run timeline, and with the camera setting, you can see this view, right? Uh, some of you may be not familiar why I can only see the camera view and the outline is all blank. It's a very simple trick. Basically, it's just the camera. If you go into camera property, you just do the pass out to one. All right. If I set it to zero, you can see the background of the camera view as well. But if you slowly move it up to one, you can now focus on just a camera view of what you want to see. And this will be what is rendered in the final video. All right. All right. That's simulating a day run. Now, night scene. The the request was to have it a night scene because I think it's about a music video about the moon at night and not daytime. All right. So let's look at a night scene. So going back to the world, I have already set up a night scene. Remember, if you want to save your environment, always have the little uh, fake user tick. Otherwise, it won't be safe. All right. Okay, the night world. This night world that I chose. Okay, now how does it come about? This I've been trying to look at many night scene, and this particular shader for the night world I thought was the most appropriate because it's a very simple shader with you able to create stars as many as you want. So just go into the shader of the night view, go into render mode here in the shaping. Um, if I were to look at the sky, it's a pretty complicated setup, but anyway, my intention is not to explain how it's set up, but I'm providing it as part of this demo file that you can also play with. There are a number of value you can adjust, right? After some tweaking, I think the part where you see value, adjust the density of how many star or the size of the star and so on. You just play with that number. You can adjust the star. I'm not gonna waste time. I think there's a tutorial on this created by someone to explain this shader. It's a very nice shader. It's thanks to this guy. I can create many stars as I like on a night scene. So, so this is a night sky, and it works very well on my environment. So assuming you just use it as what I already set up, which I think is pretty good, I can move on to the next part. Okay, now that I have a night scene, let's add some lights. Adding lights, I mean, traditionally most people would add lights individually into where they want to place all their street lights or whatever they want to create of a scene. But for me, I felt that it's easier if I would to just use a particle system to create lights that of different coloring. So let me explain what that is like. Let me go into the lights. Lights is very important for night scene. So yeah, let me explain how I set up the particle Let me see. I can. Yeah. Um, is on this thing which I call river lantern emitter. Uh, so maybe I should type it here. C colon riverside lantern emitter. Actually, it's not lantern, but anyway, I put it there because I do have a lantern originally, but I took it out. Um, let's go to the render mode. Can you now see it? If I don't have the street light, and why you can see some red light because I have a sun point, right? Let's switch on the sun, all right. Okay, this is the original scene before I added the light. So what I do is that I added the emission of light. So what does that mean? That means that basically I just create a simple plane. And if you go to the particle system, the setup is very simple. It's just a hair setup. And with that, and then set up a collections of particles light. What is particle lights? In this case, it is, let me see here, up here. I'm trying to kind of distribute along this street of lights. There are three streets I'm setting up, by the way. One on the left, one behind the main street, there on the on the center, and then you have another emitter on the right hand side of the embankment. So you saw you have the first embankment behind the embankment on the left, and then you have the street light on the right. So there's three emitters that are set up, all right? They're all similarly set up, and it is a collection of lights, and the lights, there are three color I set up. So what you find is that because my particle system that I set up, let me go back to that. I only add in like 20 lights. All right, not many. This is sufficient for my purpose. All right. If I go back into the camera mode, all right, I can play around with the point light to create a different type of scene that I want in terms of coloring. Uh, I use about 120,000 watt for the for only 20 lights on one of the streets, and I can have different coloring. If I change the color to white, all of them change to white. Let's say the effect that you get is not as nice. It's pretty boring. You can see they are all white lights now on the street. However, if you try to change it into color like red, can you see now? So randomly, some lights will be white, some light will be red. Here's another adjustment. I'll do a pitch setting. Now this light that you just saw looks more like the traditional Chinese street light because Chinese lighting are normally more reddish orange color in the streets. And I'll put this into orange. Okay, so you can see a bit of orange, a bit of red. And if you go back to the camera mode again, this is what you get, a reddish orange and yellow lighting streets effect. Another thing I think I want to caution you is this: when you use this method of particle system for lights, be careful how many you use. You could put, let's say, 100. Do you notice something? I show you if I go 20. All right, and then I go 100. Now, obviously, one simple thing you notice is that the light here become brighter. But what you may have not observed is that at the back, this is a pagoda at the back. I have also two lights added in to light up the pagoda so that you can see it from a camera viewpoint. But if I add in too many lights on my particle system, you can see, look at the pagoda, and if I change the one of the emitter to 100, the pagoda is gone. This appears to be a limitation in Blender, or maybe there is basically a cap. How many lights you can have in a scene, all right? So you have to, if you use too many lights, some of the lights that was added in after the fact will be not lighted up. No. So that was something I discovered by accident. That that be careful about it. So that's why you notice that for the street light, I make it brighter, uh, higher power, and less number. That way I can use lights also on other part of the scene. Like in this example, I have lights added in the pagoda, which I want it to be also visible as a background. So that is the result I got by setting with this setup of lights. So you have street lights with particle system. You have coloring, tree coloring that I just demonstrated, red, orange, and peach. And then you have the pagoda background and lit it up as well. The pagoda lighting is a little bit stronger than usual. I put 1 megawatt because it's quite far behind and it's at the top. So this is a pretty large scene, so you need to have at least 1 megawatt to have a visible view. If you put like 10,000 baht, you can see the pagoda, right? 1 megawatt I found or something just nice for it to be seen. World shader, I guess I went to that already. It should be explained first because you need that before you can explain the light. So let me change that in my tutorial number. The moon setup. Okay, I have the moon. I think the moon was also explained in my previous tutorial. It's the same moon, by the way. On the moon. Okay, and the moon is that. All right. This moon can be seen because it is dark. If I click onto a sun point, which I added in just next to the moon, okay, now you can see the moon and you can also see the pagoda better. Uh, when I showed this to my partner about the music video, she didn't like it. She felt that the pagoda lighting is not the way she like it. She think the moon is look boring again, just black and yellowish. So again, with the same uh, thing, if I go into the moon and select into object, okay, this is my moon setup. I have two setup for the moon. If I click onto the other setup by clicking material output top, this is a different moon. Now this setup for the moon is it has its own emission. So in this setup, uh, because the sun that I used was shining as the previous setup. If I switch off the sun now, notice that I repeat again, on, off, on, off. So without the sun, I can have a more subtle light up for the pagoda and the streets, so that I have a better control on the lighting. If I have the sun on, it kind of mess up with my scene, right? So in a way, it's good to use the moon with its own emission. It shows the moon very nicely and also meet what my client wanted. You can see now, back to layout. You have a full moon which is what this song is all about. And I have an environment that looks much more pleasing. So if I click the animation, you can now see that I have a singer singing with a moving background of the river with some lantern. All right, I think that is end of tutorial. There's another part that you might be interested is how to animate a sky lantern, uh, sometimes referred as a combing lantern. You can have hundreds and thousands of lantern flying out at the background, which is what I use for the final video. But for this tutorial, I will not cover it as I think the tutorial is already very long. So thank you for watching. I'll share with you another video next round. Bye.
Hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching.